Hey, everybody. This is Chris.
And Kathy.
We wanted to take a minute to thank you all for tuning in. We appreciate every listener and are grateful for this platform.
Please help us share our vision by subscribing to our show through your favorite streaming app. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Petability Podcast.
Check out our ever-growing list of affiliates and sponsors. Simply go to the show notes for information and links.
And be sure to use our promo code PETPOD22, that's PETPOD 22, on checkout to receive your discount from our affiliates. And now, here's a word from our sponsor.
Hi, I'm Alon Landa, CEO of MedcoVet, and I'm a proud sponsor of Petability. We decided to partner with Chris and Kathy because, like them, we want to empower all pet owners who are trying to do the most for their pets. At MedcoVet, we specialize in advanced home laser therapy for pets. Laser therapy is a safe and effective treatment for common conditions like arthritis and wounds, and it relieves pain for most conditions caused by inflammation. With MedcoVet, pet owners can perform this treatment at home while receiving support from experienced clinicians. If you think your pet would benefit from healing at home, visit medcovet.com, and one of our clinical experts will work with you to determine if home laser therapy is the right fit for you and your pet. Tell them Petability sent you.
If you have an opportunity to have a dog trainer come in and work with you and the family before the dog comes home, that's even better.
Welcome to Petability. I'm your host, Kathy Simons, certified veterinary technician, certified canine rehabilitation practitioner, and certified hospice and palliative care technician for pets.
And I'm your host, Chris Cranston, licensed physical therapist and small animal physical rehabilitationist.
Our podcast provides interviews and information to help your pets live their best lives.
Good afternoon, Chris. How are you doing over there today?
I'm great. And let me tell you why. My week started off on a wonderful note. Once a month, I go and play bunco with a bunch of women, and we basically, socialize and chit chat. Well, this week, Stacy hosted. Stacy is a animal lover. She currently has an older Cairn Terrier named Jimmy, and she has a cat named Willow and a bird named Charlie. And so as things were wrapping up toward the end of the night, Stacey said, is anybody, afraid if I take Charlie out of her cage? And I'm like, of course, super excited, but a little bit wary of birds. I must tell you, I've never met a nicer bird in my life. First of all, she was stunning and beautiful. So I learned that she's a conure. And she was just going from person to person to person, perching on their finger. Well, then, of course, I had to kind of, insert myself. And she was like on my shoulder and she danced. And it was just amazing. And after holding her about, I'd say almost an hour, she only pooped on me 3 times. So I call that a win.
Yeah, I got the pictures that you sent me of Charlie. She is beautiful. And I would say, I think, based on the pictures that you sent me, that Charlie looks like either a maroon belly or a green cheek conure, which is honestly in my top 5 for all-time favorite birds. Very personable, very charming, extremely intelligent. And I think that pet birds get maybe a bad rap because I think there's a misconception that birds, they're not smart. They're bird brains. They're not a smart pet, but they're extremely intelligent. If people are interested in learning more about birds, we have 2 shows that we recorded a couple of years ago, right? One with Dr. Marge McMillan, we called Gone with the Birds. She's an avian veterinarian. And then I did one with you on pet bird rehabilitation. So if people are interested in learning more about birds, they should go back and listen to those shows.
The nice thing that our host has done recently is that you can search for shows. So just put in birds and those will come up.
So today, Chris, I am super excited to talk with our guest. We have certified dog trainer Tracey Costa here with us. And we'll be talking to Tracey today about introducing a new dog, whether it be a puppy or an adult dog, into a family with children. You and I have talked about doing this show many, many times because we encounter it many, many times with our clients. And Bringing in a new dog into your home is one of the most joyful, life-changing moments you can experience. And there's the excitement of like meeting your furry companion and that deep desire to build this lasting bond and the dreams of a harmonious life filled with, wagging tails and sloppy kisses and unshakable loyalty. But if we're being honest, that dream doesn't happen by chance. It requires effort, consistency, and most importantly, guidance. And that's where the professional dog trainer like Tracey is invaluable. Children, and I think all children, should learn how to be respectful of animals. And I think that children should be taught how to interact with animals in a manner that's both safe and enjoyable for the dog and for the children. And so from my perspective, I think incorporating children in the training process is both rewarding and bonding. And I think it's also important for children who are of age to understand that training their dog is not about control. It's about collaboration. And I can tell you that when my husband and I adopted Mac, who has been described as a brilliant criminal on occasion, the first thing we did was call Tracey to come to our home to see how we could integrate him into our family. I think Tracey will agree with this. I'm going to speak for her right now. Mac is a genius. He's a full-blown genius. And that requires, that required having the trainer come in and teach us. And what Tracey told us is a lot of training is actually about people and not necessarily about the dog. So I'm really interested to hear what Tracey has to say about cultivating a relationship between dogs and children, how we can set the family up for success with a new dog, and how we can ensure that that dog thrives as the children grow and routines change. So let me give you a little bit of background on our friend Tracey before we get started. Tracey Costa is a certified dog trainer, knowledge assessed, and a certified nose work instructor. She is a certifying official and a judge for the National Association of Canine Scent Work. Tracey is the past vice president of the West Highland White Terrier Club of New England and has served as a board member for many years. Tracey is also an approved AKC Canine Good Citizens evaluator, and her dog Maisie was the first Westie to have earned the Canine Nosework titles NW1, NW3, NW3 Elite, Elite 2, Elite 3, and Elite Champions. And she continues to compete with her Westie Josie, beautiful little Josie.
Hey, I'm sorry, Kathy. I have to interject here, but for those of us who haven't done nose work,
it's a big deal.
Well, I was going to say, this sounds like a big deal.
It's a big deal.
Is that like the highest level that you can get?
It's the highest of levels.
Awesome. Congratulations, Tracey.
And Tracey is, of course, an advocate for humane and force-free dog training, and her training techniques are reward-based. And Tracey isn't just someone who teaches your dog to sit and stay. Tracey is the bridge between you and your dog's potential and your vision of a well-balanced, happy home. Working with a trainer is one of the most loving, responsible decisions that you can make. So please welcome to the show, my friend, Tracey Costa.
Welcome, Tracey. So happy to have you here.
Thank you for having me. And boy, what an intro that was. that was just so lovely. And the collaboration piece. And Kathy, I am so flattered that you remembered some of the things we talked about. How long ago was that?
5 or 6 years ago. Yeah.
Wow. It really is about training the human. Dogs are easy. I can take any dog. Like for me, it's like rolling off a log, so they say, but training the human to be and understand their dog, to almost sometimes be a dog. Can you be a dog in this moment and understand why your dog is doing what they're doing?
Tom and I definitely took that to heart, and it really was very helpful for us to make sure that we were able to participate in the activities that you assigned to us to assure that Mac was going to be integrated well into our family.
I didn't realize you called him a criminal, though, so we'll have to talk about that later.
A brilliant criminal, Tracey, brilliant.
When you're talking about your collaboration, Tracey and Kathy, and Kathy, you don't have children, but it was still so important, right? To bring in a trainer, get this foundation. So I can only imagine that that's exponentiated when you have a child or multiple children in the home. So getting to the topic at hand, why is it important to carefully consider bringing a dog into a family with young children? What are the things that folks should be thinking about, parents should be thinking about?
Well, first, I always say to people, how busy is your life? If your children are already scheduled and doing all sorts of activities, how much time do you really have to devote to this dog and bringing this dog into your home or puppy? And I'll look at the mom, because typically it is the mother who's approaching me on this. And I'll say, do you really have the time to take care of one more thing in your life? And do you want to? And I'm a mom. As much as I'd like to, sometimes bringing in something in addition to everything else I'm doing might not be good at that point in time. So, and I try to tell new pet parents, as much as you may want your children to take care of the dog and show that responsibility, ultimately it will fall to you if the children, say, have big tests or big soccer games or big whatever coming up. So you just can't say to the kids, hey, it's your responsibility. Ultimately, at the end of the day, it's going to be the parents' responsibility. So that's where Kathy said the word collaboration. I love that. It is a joint effort. It has to be a joint effort. It shouldn't be on more than one person or the other, or on the kids or the parents. When my daughter wanted a dog, boy, oh boy, did she hound me and my husband. And one day she broke my husband down, and my husband came in and he said, Pray, I guess we have to get a dog. And I said, oh boy, great. I'm going to pick the one that I want, because I knew that at the end of the day, ultimately, that dog was always going to be my responsibility. So I chose the dog that I felt most comfortable with at the time.
Well, how do we know what dog is going to fit with our family? Do we get a small dog? Do we get a big dog? Do we get, an active dog? Do we get a couch potato? How do we know who's going to fit?
Well, that's a really good question. And one of the things I would recommend to people is most folks have an idea of what they want, whether they want to do a rescue or get a puppy from a breeder. For some reason, people pick a certain ideal dog and then go from there. And I like to ask people, what kind of lifestyle do you have? And that goes back to how busy you are. Kathy, maybe a couch potato is good for the family who is super busy. Because if you think about it this way, if you're so busy that you don't have enough time to, say, run your dog for 2 miles and burn off some energy and do some mental stuff with your dog, the couch potato will be perfectly content with maybe missing that daily walk when baseball season is on. I ended up with small dogs because my husband, when he was a kid, was attacked by a Doberman and a German Shepherd.
Oh.
So he was always nervous around big dogs. Me, I never cared. That never fazed me. So I had to find a small dog that fit my personality. And so what I would say to people is go where the dogs are. Go to the beaches around here in Massachusetts in the fall, look at dogs around there. Go to a dog show, ask friends. The internet really provides some great information of like AKC. Some folks, when they were growing up, let's say they had an Alaskan Husky, and they really think that it might be a good idea to get another one because they had that bond with their Husky when they were a child. And I would just remind them, well, you were a child. Were you cleaning up all that fur from that husky?
Right.
Your mother was, right? Like think about those kinds of things.
I think if you have a specific breed in mind, maybe their behaviors are a little bit more predictable based on what they are bred for. So for instance, Mac is, Chinese royalty. He was bred for being a companion. He's very good at that. He's very, very good at that. But if you were to have Mac in your house to protect your home or to go 5-mile runs, this would not be the dog for you.
Exactly. Did you know that terrier ownership is down because most people don't like terrier personalities? Right. Which is why Frenchies are so popular with families, because just like a Mac dog, they were built to. Their only purpose was to be a companion. King Charles Cavalier, same thing, companion dog. Terriers were meant to basically not listen to a human and go kill things, right? So,
Yeah.
so
Right.
some people don't like that kind of personality. And of course, within every breed group, you have deviations from the norm, sort of thing. And that's why a lot of families do choose to get a puppy and a specific breed. There is something to be said for understanding that background and what you're getting.
To chime in here because I was asked recently what my favorite breed is. And I don't have a favorite breed. I said it depends on the individual personality. And to that point, you know, a lot of shelters and rescues have gotten away from trying to put a breed label on the pets that they have, the dogs that they have up for adoption, because it is so erroneous. You know, they've done these studies where, you know, experts are trying to determine based on how they walk, the side view, back view, front view, head shape, you know, and they're wrong, right? And so any of you who have had DNA done for a quote mutt, you've probably been very surprised by what's come back. And so for that reason, I guess my bottom line is don't get a dog based on their looks. Certainly, you know, like you said, Tracey, there's some, you might gravitate toward a little dog or a fluffy dog or something like that, but more on their temperament and their personality. And don't make assumptions because it looks like a terrier. It may not be a terrier at all.
I 100% agree. It really is about the personality. And we humans can't help ourselves. We are definitely drawn in by looks of any animal, just like we are drawn in by looks of a person. But when you have children, you really have to think about the personality of that animal coming into your home.
Yes. And, you know, I don't think there are guarantees with getting a specific breed from a breeder because nature and nurture. So yes, there is genetic predisposition. What was this dog, you know, bred to do? Historically, I mean, that may have been, you know, 1,000 years ago, but, you know, depending on the environment, and we know even experiences in the womb and shortly after birth, how the mom dog raised their puppies and can have a huge impact on how they turn out. So, you know, meet the dog and, like you said, you know, based on the personality and your lifestyle within your home, you know, figure out what's best for you. Tracey, to pivot a little bit, can you speak to maybe some specific benefits of bringing a dog into a family, especially for the kids?
You know, there's all the typical answers, you know, responsibility and empathy. I think just having that companion, you know, really honestly, that unconditional love when you come in to your house and even if you've been gone 15 minutes, your dog's like, where have you been? Thank goodness you're home. Where else do you get that from? And I think kids just absolutely love that. And honestly, it's a connection to the natural world. In this society that we have so many of these other types of connections, having an animal brings you to a part of the world that maybe these kids wouldn't get to. Right. Hey, we got to walk the dog. So let's go into the woods. Would your children go into the woods normally under any other circumstances? Or let's walk to the beach. Or it's just that connection. And the empathy part is huge because, and being a dog owner, all dog owners are going to nod their head in agreement. When you're feeling like heck, you say, I got to get up. I got to get up and I got to go do something for the dog, right? You just can't lay there and feel sorry for yourself or aches and pains. You're always thinking about that animal and that animal needs something. So I think for children, it does add that extra piece of love and experience that they may not get.
And getting away from screen time, you know, to your point, getting outside.
Oh gosh, yeah.
And I think from a physical point of view, we know now that having a pet, I don't know if it's specifically a dog, but it improves the children's immune system, improved immunity. And
it sure does.
Yeah. So there, you know, not just the psychosocial and emotional benefits, but also some physical benefits.
I think for me as a child, the best thing about we didn't have a dog either, but we had cats. And I think the best thing for them was I could come home and I could confide in them. I told them all my stories, all my secrets, all my anxieties, all my And
Mhm.
they're just like, okay. They just that they I have the full
Unconditional love.
I have full attention. I
Yep.
have my cat's
Yeah.
full attention as I'm telling them what happened at school. And
Yes. I used to do therapy dog with both of my Westies. They were certified therapy dogs through Therapy Dog International. And one of the volunteer things I did was children had an opportunity to read to my dog, Dundee, who was the best listener. And he knew how to appropriately raise his eyebrows while they were reading, like he was listening. And he would just lay completely still the entire time. He was just brilliant at that. So bringing home a dog for your children, whether it's a dog, a bird, or a cat, having that collaboration, speaking to your children about what expectations are going to be. I wish that everyone who, and we'll talk about dogs in this instance, everyone who wants to bring home a dog, whether it's an adult dog, a puppy, a rescue, or one from a good breeder, that you're willing to walk away from the dog if you see something in the personality that you don't feel comfortable with. There'll be another dog for you. I want to say that, like, there'll be another puppy or another dog. Do not feel pressure to take that dog if you, in the back of your head, you're saying, this doesn't, to me, I don't feel good about this. And your kids are like, yeah, this is going to be perfect. But in your head, you're saying, there's just something I can't put my finger on. Trust your gut and say, you know what, kids, let's keep looking, and trust that piece when you decide on what pet you want.
Tracey, do you ever consider going with a family to meet dogs? Like, do people ever incorporate you in that meeting? Like, hey, Tracey, we're thinking about adopting this dog. Can you come with us?
I wish.
That would be great,
I
wouldn't it?
really
Yeah.
wish.
Yeah.
I do. And I want to remind people that just because you call a dog trainer, it shouldn't be considered a last resort. It should be
Right.
considered
A necessity. Yeah.
right. Like, well, and like somebody who has no stakes in all of this. They just want to go and try to have no emotional attachments to whether or not this is a good dog for you. And I think that that's a great thing. I've done puppy assessments, and I'll assess each puppy. I'll write down what I see, and then I will talk to the breeder, because the breeder really knows each puppy's personality. And I love doing it because I'm a nerd, right? I just love that kind of nerdy stuff. And I love to be able to read dog puppy body language and look at personalities. And boy, not to brag or anything, but I've been pretty close on all of the personalities when I assess puppies. And it's been a lot of fun for me. And again, because I'm a dog trainers are funny people. They always like to take the naughtiest in the bunch. I'm like, oh man, that puppy is so funny. And I always find the naughty puppy is the funniest thing ever. Now, again, for your regular family, I wouldn't advise picking the naughtiest puppy in the litter. I wouldn't advise picking the puppy who's hiding behind the chair either, right? So you have to consider your family. And I think going with a dog trainer who has some skill at reading dog body language is huge and will be a real help to you as a family when picking a puppy.
Tracey, once the family has found the ideal dog to incorporate into their family, what's the best way for us to introduce that dog to young children?
Well, hopefully it was done first before the puppy came home or the dog came home to live with the family. I would always remind families, don't necessarily overwhelm that puppy with all these experiences with a whole bunch of family members all at once. Puppies and dogs really like things quiet at first when they're going through that transition period. And I would say try to be as quiet and calm as possible. And when you're incorporating your family, keep your routines the same. You know, if the kids have a game the next day, it's a perfect opportunity for the puppy to decompress, stay in their crate or their X-pen area, and you go and bring your child to the game the next day. When you come home, it's no big deal. Hi, puppy. And then you just start weaving them into the fabric of your life. And I think doing all your homework, like reading a few books, getting all of your supplies ready before you bring that puppy home is huge. The more things you can do up front, the better off you'll be. If you're going with a breeder, talking to the breeder about expectations. If you have an opportunity to have a dog trainer come in and work with you and the family before the dog comes home, that's even better, because then you can go over things with the children. Like, puppies don't like to be lifted way up in the air off the floor and crushed in a bear hug, as an example. Let's talk about how puppies like to be pet. Let's talk about how when the puppies are eating, how we are respectful of their space, or puppies when they're sleeping, they don't want you jumping on the couch and bouncing them up and down on the couch cushion if that's where the puppy's resting. I think that those are great conversations that can be done with the children before the dog comes home.
I love the fact that you said continuing with your own routine, but I don't think that children and dogs are that different in what they need and kind of their care and, setting up boundaries and expectations and all of that. So what I was thinking about was the family that has the new baby and then they walk around like mice and they whisper, they talk. And then and as soon as the phone rings or something, the baby starts bawling. But if they just carry on with their normal routine, the baby understands that these are the normal sounds of this household, and you're cooking and there's different smells and things. So the dog or the puppy would be kind of the same way. Like, you're not going to freak them out, like you said. You're going to allow them to decompress and go slowly, but integrating them into your household in a kind and gentle way is wonderful advice. That's a great pearl.
I want to say one of the things I tell pet owners, pet parents with children is, you've invited a perpetual third grader to live with you for the next 12 to 15 years. So how do you feel about that? And if you've been around a third grader for any length of time, you totally understand my statement. And they're perpetual third graders. Of course, like anything else, the older a dog gets, the more they slow down and that sort of thing. But that's their reasoning capacity. So if you have a very busy household, you have a household full of third graders.
Well, tell me this, let's talk about the actual specific introduction. So you said, hopefully this happens, before you bring the dog home. But when your child is meeting a dog for the first time, do you go through the, I don't know. I mean, you tell me, do they get down on their level? Do they hold their hand out? Do they just stand still? Do they not make eye contact? What are those physical things, kind of the basic things that every child should know?
So I'm going to tell you what I told my daughter when she was 5 years old. I said, Sarah, ignore every dog and they will follow you around forever. I said, play hard to get. And my daughter to this day ignores dogs and they try so hard to get her attention. And she loves animals. And we used to vacation a lot in Maine, in Kennebunkport. And that is such a dog friendly town, by the way. And we would go down the beach and dogs would be on the beach and she would want to say hello to every single dog. And I would say, you must always ask the human first, and then you must ask the dog. And so that would look like, hello, can I pet your dog? And if the human said yes, she would then look at the dog and pat her leg. And the dog would say yes or no to that invitation. And if the dog said no, I said, oh, well, Sarah, on to the next. And we would just continue walking our way. That's my secret advice to every child. Play hard to get and ignore that dog. And they will say, but what's happening? And they will want to be with your kid. And dogs don't need you, the old fashioned thing, hold your hand out so the dog can smell you. Well, Kathy, you know this. Dogs can smell you from across the room. They don't need the big fist coming in at their face. They don't want you petting them on the head. It's just rude. Ask them by simply turning sideways, bending at the knee, patting your leg, and say, if I go pup, 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 and that puppy will come running over if they want to say hello. And if they don't, I'm like, okay, that's fine. We can be friends later.
And it's okay as an owner to also advocate for your dog. If your dog says, I don't want to be bothered by a child, whether it's your children or somebody else's children, it's okay to say, no, you can't pat my dog today. You know, he's not up for today.
100%.
It's okay to say no.
And I think that I think a lot of times making parallels between people and pets helps people to understand. So,
yes,
there's introverted people, there's extroverted people. And, there's people that enjoy hugs and there's people that are like, I'm not really comfortable with the physical contact. And so if you think about that with pets and again, listen to them and know what they're saying, which is a hard thing sometimes. But if you practice it, I think it becomes more and more obvious.
I agree. And I think the hardest thing is that people get hurt feelings if a dog doesn't want to say hello to them. And they really do. And I wish they wouldn't, because again, just like you said, there are introverts and extroverts. Not all dogs are all about humans. Sometimes it's really interesting. Some dogs are more about kids than they are about adults, or boys than they are about girls. It's just really fascinating to watch these dogs, who they would choose to be interested in. Just like humans, dogs have preferences too. So when people bring home a dog, I think it's important. If there's only one child, we don't have to really worry too much about that child glomming and loving on the dog, right? But if you have 3 or 4 children, then perhaps it could be a little overwhelming for the dog when they're all greeting the dog all at once. So if you're good at scheduling your kids and having them all, and this is age dependent, of course, too, having them all responsible for a certain thing, I think that's a great way that each of your children could build a relationship with the dog individually. And a good dog trainer has up their sleeve, or they should, some really great games that they can teach your family. That's dog approved games for kids and dogs to play together with.
Let's get into that, Tracey, because I know that you helped one of our mutual friends. Chris and I have a friend named Jane, who Jane has incorporated a Swiss mountain dog into her family. And I think you went to their home first, right? And incorporated these games. Can you tell us about that?
I met her a couple of times off site, and then I did go to her home. By the way, I love greatest Swiss mountain dogs, just as a side note. When I met Henry, I'm like, I'm in love with your dog.
Right. He's a good guy. Yes.
He is a good guy. So some of the games that I taught Jane's children to play, and I taught Jane, and we also, of course, incorporated Henry, was, where's the kid game? That's one where we name each child. And then we have, it's kind of like a hide and seek. We hold Henry, and then we say, where's Jane? And Henry and Jane might make a little noise, and she's hiding behind a chair. Of course, Henry can still see Jane. That's the point. But he's learning each person's name in the family. It's one little game. I have another game where, and this is the Cliff Notes version, of course, I have another game where the family can stand in a circle and they practice name recalls with the dog. So everybody has treats, and each family member takes a turn calling the dog and rewarding the dog. I absolutely love that, because what if something happens and your dog is only used to coming back on recall with the parents, but not with the children? So this is another great game that is appropriate training for a dog. The dog's learning the recall, learning their name, and learning to come and respect the children. And I love that game. And the kids, Jane's children, really love this game too. And Henry, of course, was, woohoo, give me these treats. This is great. So that is another game. I love doing, everybody wants to teach their dog paw, right? Let's do paw, a shake. There is a great book on Amazon that is like 101 tricks that your children can teach your dog.
Yeah, we can put that in the show notes, Tracey. So if you provide us that information, that would be awesome.
Yeah, it's a great book. I love teaching children. This is one of the first things I'll teach families as well too, to have their dog hand target. So the child presents their hand, and the dog will nose bump the hand for a treat. And it's called touch. And this way, the dog has the option to touch the human's hand instead of us always reaching and grabbing for the dog. So touch is my basic. I teach every family how to do that. Whether your dog is old or young, they should all know how to do a touch.
Tracey, all of these things to me are assisting in building a stronger bond, a stronger relationship between the family and their new pet.
Right.
Would you agree?
Any training that a family does with your dog builds a relationship. It's never not worth it. It's always worth it. That's where I wish when people did were considering bringing a new dog, that as part of finding a veterinarian as a step before you bring in a puppy or a dog to your home, you also look into a dog trainer. Dog trainers does not mean you have a failure. A dog trainer is someone who can give you a leg up, if you will, in your training before you even bring that puppy home. And I feel like we've been really touching on when you've already had slightly older children. We can certainly talk about what happens if you've had a dog in the house and you have a baby coming. And I know that might be another podcast down the road, but calling a trainer is not failure. It's getting yourself ahead of any learning curve.
Put in a nutshell what those signs of success are. Like as a trainer, and you maybe worked with a family and you're like, my work here is done. They've got it. Or is that too individual?
Well, it is individual, but I want to say signs of success with a family is one, when I don't hear from them, I know things are going well, right? Like all dog trainers say that, but that's certainly towards the end. I want to say how I know things are successful. There's just a feeling in the air for me. Honestly, I don't feel any anxiety coming off the parents anymore. There's no anxiety. I know a lot of people have this idea of the perfect dog. And I tell people, and I want to remind people, there's no such thing as a perfect dog. There's only a perfect dog for you. So my vision of a perfect dog is certainly going to be different than Kathy's or than Chris, because we all lead different lifestyles, right? We all have different lives. And so do families. So I always ask them what their perfect ideals are. And then in this way, we open the conversation of what we can work on for training. And then I hit those points and they're like, wow, thank you.
We didn't really touch on resource guarding. I'm one of those people. I sought the advice of a pet communicator, and she said that the other adult in my household, they didn't know what her role was and just saw her as a head. And this head is just exists in the household. And so it was advised by the animal communicator that she start feeding the dogs and developing a relationship through food, because so many animals, as you've insinuated, right? The reward of the food is typically it. So is this something that you encourage with children of the appropriate age to feed the pet to develop that bond? Or do you worry about resource guarding? Is there a screening, should a dog that has the propensity to resource guard, whether it's a toy or food or be protective of a person, not be brought into a family? Or can that be trained such that it is safe for all?
There's a lot of layers there, but I'll unwrap some of that. All animals have the ability to be a resource guarder. All animals. We humans are resource guarders. If you lock your dog door at night, you're a resource guarder. If you lock your car door, you're a resource guarder. Those are your resources and you're not sharing them. I think resource guarding and puppies there are certain steps you can take to ensure that a dog is used to you taking certain things away. I love the idea of everyone sharing in the responsibility of feeding the dog. It shouldn't just fall to one person because, and I say this, and I know other dog trainers say this, food is love, play is love. So having someone also having kids take turns feeding the dog and asking the dog to perform a few behaviors when the bowl is set down, I think is appropriate. I feel like a lot of resource guarding will crop up in dogs in homes because of misunderstandings. So I'll give you a for instance. For instance, a dog gets hold of a dryer sheet from the laundry and the kids see it and they say, Mommy, Ralph has the dryer sheet. And all of a sudden, all the kids run towards Ralph. And Ralph is like, holy cow, it's just a dryer sheet. And Ralph takes off a million miles an hour and ends up behind the couch. And everybody's reaching at Ralph to grab that dryer sheet. And he's like, well, it wasn't that special, but boy, oh boy, now it is. And I'm cornered. And what do I do? Now, that seems like really not a huge thing, but imagine that over time, happening multiple times over and over again, that whenever Ralph gets something that he shouldn't, and everybody jumps on Ralph, Ralph over time is going to start guarding his body and saying, oh, no, you're not coming after whatever special thing I have. One, it could potentially turn into a game, and then it becomes that resource guarding piece. So that's an instance where maybe the dog wasn't a resource guarder, but because of certain actions that played out, now it says maybe I'm going to have to resource guard. Some dogs are just hardwired when they come home to be resource guarders. And for whatever reason, they start getting into things and people start snatching objects away. That then brings that behavior to the forefront. So there are certainly ways to prevent resource guarding, I think, or at least to soften it. So we have that line of communication with the dog where the dog understands that he doesn't have to resource guard everything in the home. The other thing I'll just throw out there for anyone who may be suffering from resource guarding, don't blame yourself for this. This is just something that happens. Sometimes dogs just will resource guard. And if you have a dog who's resource guarding, ask for help with that. We get really insulted when our dogs growl at us if we try to take something away. And we hear that growl. Sometimes we're like, excuse me? And we get very upset because, I give you everything in the whole wide world. I'm just taking away this dumb dryer sheet that could kill you. Dogs don't look at it like that. So it can be tricky. And it's really no joke when a dog does start resource guarding. You really have to call a professional. But if you're coming home with a brand new puppy, ways to prevent it is making sure you put your things away so the dog doesn't get anything nefarious that you have to start ripping out of their mouth. I always joke, as long as it doesn't cause death and dismemberment, let the dog have it and start working on a trade game with the dog. I do want to just roll that into feeding time. No dog should tolerate being touched when feeding. I always leave my dogs alone. I look at it like, say, Kathy, you come to my home and you start stroking my arm when I'm eating my dinner. I'm going to say, what's wrong with you? Why are you touching me?
That would be weird.
That's going to elicit some sort of response from me. So there's certain things that we as the adults can set our dogs and our children up for success. So the dog doesn't have to escalate by using their language to tell us to knock it off. Every family with children should start working on a trade game with their dogs and teaching them how to trade for certain objects. So again, Cliff Notes version of a trade game would be your dog's playing with their toy, whatever the toy is. And they're just having fun with it and they're tossing it around, have you. You pick up a treat and you toss the treat towards the dog. Don't reach for that toy yet. You let the dog notice the toy again. Now the dog, once you toss the treat at the dog may either pick up the toy or say, oh, what she has is way better. So she may come to you. If the dog comes to you, hand a treat again, you pick up the toy, put the toy behind your back, and then make the toy reappear and ask the dog to take the toy. And you hand the toy to the dog. You may only get a couple of tries at this because it depends on the dog, right? Some dogs are really food motivated. Some dogs are more motivated by the toy or play. So the dog may take the toy. The dog may say, nope, I just really want your treat. So if you've got the dog who takes the toy, you hand the toy back and you can then pull the treat out again and toss the treat away. The dog is going to either carry the toy with them or drop the toy and run and get the treat. So we'll say if the dog drops the toy, once it gets the treat, allow the dog to come back and pick up that toy again. It's like give and take. Like think about any relationship you have with a human. You're not always taking things from their hands. You're doing a give and take, like passing money back and forth for a piece of pie. Here's your pie for $3, back and forth. You pass things back and forth. It's kind of the same idea. If your dog is only interested in the treat, well, you wait for another opportunity for the dog to have something and you toss a treat at them. And this way, hopefully, and again, this is just the Cliff Notes version of it, hopefully the dog gets used to you standing around them with something high value and they know they're going to get something good in return. Corey is my youngest puppy. She's very much about her mealtime. She eats like she's speaking a convict, like she's never gotten a meal. Every meal, it's inhaled in 2 seconds flat. When I first came home with her, when I first brought her home at 11 weeks, I noticed that she ate even faster when I approached her food bowl. And I was like, well, I'm not a big fan of that. And I would notice if I got too close that she would get stiff. And those to me are all signs that she's feeling uncomfortable with me being that close. And I said, well, I'm going to work on that. And so when I would put down her food to eat, I would play this game called Bonus at the Food Bowl. And I would walk closer, not so close that would make her eat faster or get stiff, but at that perfect balance, if you will. And I would toss a treat at her. And I did it every mealtime. And my goal was when I would approach, she would look at me waiting for something better. And it takes about a week of doing that game. And when I would approach, she would stop. She would still have her tongue on her food, but she would stop inhaling and just look at me. And boom, that's what I was looking for. She's like, I'm waiting. I don't want to take my tongue off this food, but I know you've got something for me. And that's what I wanted. I wanted to signal that my presence brought something really good. And that's a game that I love to play with puppies, with adult dogs, of course. But I truly believe that dogs should just be left alone when they're eating. I don't like dogs eating in the busiest room in the house. Like if your kitchen is super noisy, feed them in their crate, feed them in another section where they can have a little peace and quiet when they dine. I like to do that for dogs. Just, I don't like to add that extra pressure to a dog's life. They put up with living with us, for goodness sakes.
Right,
I mean, at the very least,
yeah.
at the very least, they can have a quiet meal.
Let them have,
right?
let them have some space. Yeah.
Tracey, I just want to bring up one other example because I feel like we've kind of been
Sure.
insinuating, with having maybe smaller children and, and teaching them respect and boundaries and those sort of things from the beginning. But I remember very specifically going to a person's home to rehab a dog. And this dog was challenging from a behavioral point of view. So, I got to kind of know the owners. Turned out that they had a teenage son. And for him, it was fun to tease the dog, make the dog growl, take things away, wrestle. And so then this dog was generalizing, I think. And, he had, like things can be cute when they're a puppy, right? Like you don't think about these things, but it perpetuates into adulthood. So, you're pushing the puppy around and they're growling and they're little cute, and it's not that threatening, but be mindful that these behaviors then have to be undone. And that's very, very hard once they're kind of set. So I don't know. I just wanted to bring that example up because I think a lot of times we don't think about how the evolution of the relationship as the children grow potentially and or having various ages within a household and how an older child may interact with a dog or puppy differently than a young one.
And Chris, honestly, like, again, young kids always get a bad rap. Young kids, they can't control themselves. They're so antsy. They move fast and blah, 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 blah. You made a good point. Sometimes the older kids can be very challenging with a young dog. I was talking to my sister about how I was doing this podcast, and I said, do you remember when we were growing up that our parents said to us, if you ever get bitten by the dog, the first word by a dog that they would say to you, well, what did you do?
Mm-hmm.
It was always our fault, right? Right. If you got chased by a cow or a horse, our parents would say, well, why were you bothering it? Right. Like that, the onus always came onto us. So if the rooster chased us down and pecked us, it was our fault. Like, why were we messing with that bird? If a dog bit us, why were you messing with that dog? I think that sometimes we see all of these things on TV. I like to call it the Lassie syndrome. Lassie's so brilliant and so forgiving and so knowledgeable that we have these huge expectations for these dogs not to behave like dogs. And again, the only way a dog can communicate their discomfort is by snaps, growls, bites, barks, scratches, right? Like that's what they're limited to. Yeah, that's just a really unfortunate thing. And I think that's why when I meet a wonderful family and I see well-behaved kids, that they are a great candidate for a family pet. If you have any struggles with children in your home, it's okay to say that having a dog or a cat might not be a good candidate, right? Like,
right.
If your child really wants a pet, think about what would be a good candidate for your child in your home. There's plenty of different types of pets. It doesn't have to be a dog. And if you struggle parenting your own children, then, I hate to say it, but it might not be a good idea to bring in an animal at this point.
Right. Yeah.
Well, that's just a reality check. People have to.
It is.
Really do soul searching and just don't, get a puppy because your neighbor got a puppy and it's the popular thing to do or what have you. And I just want to say this last thing as we wrap up the show. I had a point in my career where it seemed like every person who was having a baby was getting a puppy at the same time. They thought that was a good idea to raise them together. And, but I mean, really at the same time, I mean, like the puppy may come in, a month before the baby due date or, vice versa. And it was nuts, to your point, like new parents are exhausted with their baby. And, so having said that, but then, and I think I know this answer, is there an ideal time to bring in a new dog? Because I have heard, like, if you do have this great family and whatever, don't wait too long because they get busier the older they get typically. And then they may, go off to college or their job and they've only been able to, that you get the dog when they're 14. They don't have that opportunity. But maybe when they're 6 or 8 or 10, they have more time available and bonding with that pet in their household to glean all the wonderful benefits.
I would say when I was a mom, the last thing I was thinking about was having a dog. My daughter didn't sleep for the first 7 months of her life. So I was not, thank goodness I didn't have a dog. I agree with you, Chris. I think older child, like around 5, is a nice time to add. I mean, your mileage will vary, right? Be honest about how your children behave. I think if you have children anywhere from 5 to 10, I think that's a lovely time to add a pet to your home. As I always say, who's going to be the main caregiver? Because, children get interested in different things at different times. So I'll always have dogs. There'll always be a dog at my house. It doesn't matter how old my daughter's going to be or not, because the dogs are for me. I think a wonderful mix is really if the parents say, I want a dog too. And then in that way, all those pain points are being hit at once. It's just not for the children. It's for the family as a whole. I think 5 years old is a good age. For some children, it might still be a little too young. So it's a nice time frame. I think once they hit teens, though, they're going to be busy with boyfriend and girlfriends or other extracurricular activities after
Right.
school, getting ready for college, like you said. Maybe you don't want to add a dog at that point. There's certainly always the case of getting an older dog to adopt too. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that if you do have older children
Right.
who may leave to college.
Tracey, as we're closing the show, what is the one essential piece of advice for families considering a dog? If you could only tell them one thing, what would it be?
If you are not sure about what kind of dog would work best for your family, to contact a good trainer and speak to them about what kind of dog would fit into your family, and have that trainer meet your family, because you could tell them all day long, but I can form an opinion a lot faster when I see the behavior happening in front of me, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to give any of this away, but I think dog trainers would be so thrilled that you called them for that bit of advice. A lot of times they just might not even charge you for anything because they'd be so happy to have the conversation with you. Don't tell them I said that.
I was going to say, now all these dog trainers are going to be like, damn it, Petability, I'm not giving away my services. People are calling me and asking me to do it for free.
But what a difference it would make in the world of that dog if we incorporated the trainer in picking out the dog for our family. It would be a whole different experience, a whole different life maybe for that dog. And so I think, Tracey, if you would please, if people are interested in contacting you for training services, for picking out puppies or any of the other services that you offer, where can they find you?
I am in Massachusetts, and I do virtual appointments, and they can find me at positivenotedogtraining.com. And I also would love to send you guys some links that you can include in your program links later, for if people have questions about, there's some really good websites about integrating dogs with kids that I would love to send along too, that has some free information for them and some nice posters about dog body language. That would also.
I want that. Yeah, I want that.
Yeah. There's some really good ones. Family Paws is a great one. Pet Professional Guild has Doggone Safe. That's another great resource. And finally, to learn more about dog body language, I Speak Dog is another wonderful website that's user-friendly and has wonderful photos to help you understand dog body language.
We will put links to all of that information in the show notes. So if you didn't have a pen handy, don't worry. There were so many delicious pearls of wisdom that I picked up during our chat, and I thank you for that. And not only did you reinforce some of the good things I'm doing, but you made me think about, some of the things I could do better with my own dogs. There's just always things that we can learn and improve our relationship with our pets. I love that you gamify things, especially when kids are involved, but I also think with adults, we're all getting shorter attention spans. And if we can make things fun versus a chore, and I think with trainers, a lot of times people will get a puppy and then they go to that, puppy kindergarten and learning basic manners, and then maybe, an obedience class. But I hope that people have heard that this is so much more than just teaching dogs to sit and down and walk on a leash with a loose lead. I mean, those are essential as well, but this is how you live with your dog, communicate with each other, and have the most thriving mutual experience that you all can have, furry or otherwise. And then the last thing, as you said, contacting a trainer, we've said it many times, there's no shame. It doesn't have to be because your dog is super anxious or they're have overexcitement or they're aggressive. They don't have to have problem behaviors for you to benefit from the consultation and expertise of a trainer.
Yeah.
Well, I had such a great time. Thank you so much for having me today and chatting. As you can see, there's a lot to unpack. And just as a reminder, you can have the best dog at home and you still need all of those, what I call public skills. But if we just considered everything a game, it wouldn't be so tedious.
Tracey, we talked a little bit about this and you touched on it in this show, but we would love to have you back to discuss the vice versa. So meaning you have an existing dogs, pets in your home. How do you bring that new baby home successfully? What are the tricks and tips for that?
Oh, well, thank you so much. I would love to come back and chat about that.
Thank you, Tracey.
All right. Thank you, Tracey.
Thank you for joining us. We hope you enjoyed our show.
Follow us on social media at Petability Podcast.
And please check out our affiliates and sponsors.
Simply go to the show notes for information and links.
Thank you and tune in next time.